Hey folks, Bowserkins here. Today I'll be taking a look at a plus 22 Halls of Atonement that I'm doing with my push group. Armani, Moonfire, Endblades, and Shaka Khan. We got a Mistweaver Monk, Outlaw Rogue, BM Hunter, and Fury Warrior. Obviously our composition, if we were going for the meta, could be a lot better, specifically in the damage category. But you'll see some of the ways that we get around that, and then at the end it's a pretty tight timer. But let's go ahead and start the video here. I've chosen to do this in a live review because I think that it helps people understand maybe how they should approach their live reviews if they take the effort to record themselves, which I recommend everybody do. Anyone who's doing keys at a higher level, generally at some point, will be looking at their gameplay to see if they're making mistakes somewhere. Not to say that 22s require that you do your reviews, but if you want to become a better player, generally that's a good idea. So let's go ahead and get this started here. This is from my Twitch live stream. You can check me out at twitch.tv/Bowserkins. So as you can see there, I started out with my Incarn right before the key went in. This gives me a small portion of my Incarn to actually start some thrashes out on the pole. Helps quite a bit. I'm running the Korain Soulbind. And I'll make a better effort in the future to show my talents at the beginning of keys if I'm going to do a live review like this, so you guys can see which talents I'm running. But any good talent guide, I mean, there's not a lot of deviation with Bear, so you'll be able to find decent guides on Wowhead, Icy Veins, the typical sources. So we start out with this poll. We do not lust here. I see a lot of pug groups lusting. You're not trolling if you're lusting here, but once you get up into the higher keys where the Shards of Halkias on the sides become a much bigger issue on your healer's mana, it's generally a good idea to approach those shards with the understanding that you're going to need a little bit extra DPS. So we just do a standard pull here. You'll notice that I'm saving my Incarn for the next pack. We have another big pull coming after this. I used to use my Incarn on this pack and I would never waste the duration. But I found that it's much more convenient if we're able to pull that next pull all together. And using my Incarn on the next pull generally provides a lot better results for us. So we're just kiting back and forth here, trying to avoid as much damage as possible. You can see from our group, HP bars are on the left. Our hunter's already popped his Wild Seed, the Dreamweaver Soulbind trait. I believe that was popped from a Deadly Thrust. So to help us with this pull, we're going to do a Stoneborn. We've already edited this to having the Stoneborn pulled to the shard. And that's what we'll be doing in the future. We just haven't gotten a 23 key to try that out. We're getting away with it here on the 22, as you'll see. Part of it's because we lust, but it would be even easier on the shard if we didn't have to worry about it. The Stoneborn loses a little bit of its value if it's not focused on one target. AoE situations, it does have the Stone Breath, but it's kind of sus. In terms of the damage it provides, you can see there, Mistweaver Monk's the one controlling it. You can see from your damage meters, it's not doing a whole lot for her. But more of the same here, kiting. As a bear, you can kind of get away with this. If you're playing a different class, like a Blood DK, a Mistweaver Monk, or excuse me, a Brewmaster Monk, you're going to be exercising far more kiting on this pull at this level on Fortified weeks, especially with Grievous. But for me, I'm able to sit in the pull quite a bit. That's why Bear's broken this season. And was last season, to be totally frank. It'll pretty much be broken until they nerf the Ursox Fury Remembered Lego. If they ever do. Starting to lose faith in Blizzard for being able to balance legendaries properly. Ursox is basically a 30-second immunity. No other tank has anything close. Alright, so when we go into this pull, we have pretty much an understanding here, and we actually mess it up on this first rotation, but we get away with it. Basically, the assignment is to have the Wicked Bolt rounds kicked with our Rogue assigned to the Collect Sins on the first try. However, you can let the collect sins channel have that first tick go off and then stun it, and you can actually use your kick on something else. But we failed to execute there because generally we save that extra kick for a curse. 7 2 curses go out is not ideal because we only have 1 decurse, which is on me. I'm going to go ahead and rewind it here in a sec so you guys can actually see that. A little bit too far, but we're living the dream here. So when we first pull this pack, the collect sins is going to get kicked right away. That's from our rogue, and our wicked bolts get kicked. That part's perfect. However, I missed my curse of obliteration kick there. I was supposed to kick one of those and then dispel the other one. We got away with it though, as you can see here. I dispel our monk, and then our warrior here is in theory supposed to spell reflect, but he decides instead of spell reflecting that he is going to eat the damage and then use his impending victory talent to heal up 40%. And we did clarify after the key that that was a little too risky, and that next time he should just use the spell reflect. But however, you're going to see, I believe, after this first set, yeah, so this is the second set of curses. 2 go off again. I dispel the hunter, and I believe with this one he actually spell reflects. Nope, he still gets hit by it. Alright, well, our warrior's just trash. As you can see, not a clean pull. Not a clean pull. And that's the point. That's the point of the video review. The warrior's going to be able to look at this as well and see that he basically ate 2 free curses while his spell reflect was up. Something that we don't want to have happen. So, areas of improvement. This is why we're in 22s and not 28s, right? We're making a lot of mistakes still. But the key is to try to avoid those mistakes in the future. So this, you can see, the thrash is quite deadly unfortified. This is generally why we try to avoid getting too crazy with this until we can kind of figure things out. You can see our healer is pretty tapped as well, so we're lucky to get this kill when we do, because it was about to get really hairy. So we're going to kill this last shade. Spiteful's been just crazy for healers, especially at the beginning of the dungeons. Please make sure you're keeping an eye on your healer's mana at all times. Because with the Spiteful Shade still out, they're going to be stuck in combat and they won't be able to drink. It's extremely important that you recognize that when you go into Spiteful keys. Spiteful also keeps you in combat, which keeps your Grievous stacks counting up, which is also extremely annoying. So we pulled this pack with Arkaloth, the Groundskeepers here. This is a very safe pull. It's even more safe, made by the fact that I have Incarn up. And really, I just use it for the damage. As you can see from the meters here, 14.2k, and I'm doing the least amount. We burn this pack down pretty well. We don't use every cooldown. Part of our strength in this group is that Outlaw Rogue and Fury Warrior have very short cooldowns. You can get a damage spike out of those specs very quickly. I mean, even Arms Warriors can kind of get away with this as well. It's not just Fury spec. But using cooldowns on every pack is one of the strengths of being able to small pull and get away with it in a 22. So at this point, I know you guys can't hear it, but in the Discord, I'm communicating to the team that the healer's behind because she's currently drinking at the moment. One of your responsibilities is the tank being the primary shot caller in most situations is to make sure that you're letting the team know what your plan is. So I was basically just letting them know I'm going to pull the pack, but to use defensives if you dip low. And that's just to save on time for the key, which you'll see is very relevant later on. Same approach here. Given that I don't have Incarn though, what I ultimately decide to do is pull the shard with the 3 here, which is in itself quite dangerous for a non-coordinated group because you don't always know when someone's going to kick something and when someone's not going to kick something. But after this is dead, you're going to see me, excuse me, after you see that the 3 little ads are dead and it's just the Shard of Halkias left, I'm going to go ahead and pull these groundskeepers over. And this is just a strategy we have developed to reduce the level of lethality on me specifically, so that I can pull those other groundskeepers with Arcaloth and not be at risk of taking much damage there. And then I'll have the Incarn up for another pull that you'll see up here. It's really just about cooldown timings. Something that you can figure out with the push group. When you're in a pug, it's a little bit more difficult because you're going to see people in chat constantly saying, pull big, I have cooldowns. But as the tank, probably not a good idea to pull off of their cooldowns when you don't have any. It's a good way to get yourself killed. Nothing special with this pull here. We're just pulling the 2 to get the shades down. As you can see, our healer is still tapped here, but she took the mana orb's power, so that will help her recollect her mana pretty quickly in these pulls. Or I can't remember actually. She might have taken the drink one, and she's low on mana. I think that might have actually been the case. The thing here is, though, I have Incarn. So as long as she has enough mana to keep the party alive, it's not a big deal. And of course, there was no communication made to me that I couldn't pull the pack here, so I'm not concerned at all. Armani is very good about letting me know if I'm about to troll the group. But you always want to, again, keep an eye on the mana. Respect your healer's requests for mana. So we pull this big pack here. I've got Incarn. We're keeping an eye on trying to kick as many Wicked Bolts as we can, and to make sure that the Loyal Beast cast from the Houndmaster does not get off. At this point, my Incarn is ended, so I've decided to Typhoon things back. I go up the stairs here for a very important reason. If I'm up the stairs, I LOS the Wicked Bolts, and it forces the Gargants to take a path that is not straight. So you can see here, I move up, I keep the Thrash stacks on my targets. And at this point, it's just a matter of trying to avoid as much melee damage as possible. This is not by any means clean for us. You can see I Boom King Convoke there because I feel pretty safe about my positioning. This is not clean by us by any means, but you know, there's very little risk in that pull if you're executing it properly. Just make sure that when you are kiting, that you're not walking back into the pack without Thrash backup. It's not worth it. Just sit there and Moonfire, throw your dots on everything, and just kind of chill. So we're letting Armani drink here. She's getting her mana up, and then we're going to go ahead and pull Oros. This is just let everyone's cooldowns. We used everything there. We didn't have them up for Shard. It's always good to communicate. As you can see in my UI, I do not use Omni CDs. I don't track anyone else's cooldowns. So if you're also of that nature, do not just expect everyone has everything up when you're going to a big pull. Communicate that to them first, and always have a backup plan if something has gone awry. Like if your group needs to pop additional cooldowns for a pack that wasn't planned, make sure you make an edit after that. You have a backup plan for an additional pull of some kind. It's not always an option. In Halls, though, it usually is until you get to the second area. Since we're down here in the lower area, it's not a big deal. As you can see, our Hunter pops their Wild Seed there. That was like a last-second swirly on the ground that he got clipped by. It happens on occasion. Alright, so I pop Incarn here. We're going in the pull again with the understanding that we get the first 2 Wicked Bolts and the Collect Sins, and I pull Curses off. It's very important that you have someone who can take curses off when you're doing high fortified keys in Halls of Atonement. So if you're pugging this key, most people just say, okay, I need a B-Res, I need a Lust. You also need someone who can take curses. That's Druid, that's Mage, that's Shaman. You must have someone who can take curses off. It's very, very difficult. This key is made much harder if you do not have someone who can take that Curse of Obliteration off, because it does a ton of damage at this key level. As you can see, our warrior who didn't have much in the way of sense to stop the damage coming in, and almost one-shot him, and warrior health is one of the highest in the game for DPS, so if you're a squishy little hunter, you're probably going to die from it, especially if you get higher up in the 23, 24 keys. You're definitely going to die. All right, so we pull this this pack over here. This probably needs to be edited. I've never felt good about just pulling this 4-pack over here with the 5-pack in the middle. We could save ourselves like a minute of time if we manage somehow to pull this left pack to the middle. But I haven't figured out how to do that when I'm not on my Blood DK, because it's very difficult to get 2 spellcasters mixed in with another spellcaster from the middle pack and the Houndmaster. As you can see, I'm having aggro issues here. This is part of the life that one has when playing with a Fury Warrior, because they tend to truck everything at the same rate. And you can really only mangle one target. It's always a good practice to try to mangle separate targets. A, because it applies a slow to each one for a duration, which helps you with the kiting, but it also actually gives you quite a bit of additional single target damage. It's not always going to work out, and if you are pugging with a warrior, keep in mind they are going to have aggro issues. Always keep an eye on your, like for me, the way my UI is set up with the plater. If the health bars start to turn yellow, that means something is high threat on the target, and I have to address that. If the nameplate turns red, that means their aggro is swapped to a different target, and that's when I really need to do something about it. As you can see, the Sinful Shade over there on the left has the red health bar. So we just clean up this pack here. Nobody uses any big cooldowns towards the end of the pack, because again, we're going to be pulling with just one gargoyle on this boss. Typical fortified option here. Our healer's at half mana. That's totally fine. Generally, if everyone's executing on this boss properly, your healer doesn't need any mana at all. Nobody should be taking damage except for the tank. And you'll see throughout the fight here, every instance of damage on party members in this dungeon is completely avoidable outside of the tank damage. You see, nobody's health bar is moved at all here, except for mine. So as you're starting out the boss, you want to keep those crumbling slams kind of backed up into the corner. My strategy generally is to take the first few in where he kind of spawns, and then bring him out here to the low open area. This is certainly even better on fortified weeks when the boss doesn't last as long. As you can see here, his his energy bar is at 100%. When that hits 100%, he's going to cast his big AoE beams. It's important when that happens that you have him ideally either away from any of the red patches so that the DPS and healer can move around him freely without having to step into a pool. Again, making the damage completely avoidable. As you can see, our healer and our DPS health has not moved whatsoever so far in this fight. But my strategy generally is to have him Crumbling Slam in a safe space. With that last Crumbling Slam, I just bring him on top of it. And that provides enough of a space there. The hitbox on this guy is big enough to where he can stand in the center and the melee can still hit him comfortably. So that's the strategy here. And this works up to three rounds, which should be more than enough for Tyrannical. If you can't kill him in three phases on Tyrannical and a high key, then you're probably not gonna time the key. And as you'll see here, I believe he only gets 2 off before we kill him. But that's something to keep in mind. You always want to make sure you're keeping an eye on where the Crumbling Slams and other red pools are, so that your DPS and healer can rotate around this guy without taking avoidable damage. Alright, so the beams come out here. Again, completely avoidable damage. Nobody should take any damage during this phase. Especially in a high key like this, if you stand in the beam, it's going to be a really sad time. So Crumbling Slam comes out. I say over Discord basically like switch sides. That just means that part of our group is separated by a line of red pools and they need to get over because I'm moving the boss away. Communication's key there. Let your party know where you're going. It's much easier when you have a push group, but even in a pug, try to indicate which side you're going to as quickly as possible. Not necessarily typing. You don't want to type when you're fighting a boss, but make your movement obvious. So there I actually take a little bit of a beam damage, I think. I was the only person I think that took avoidable damage in the whole boss fight. That's a really good example there of a Halkias fight that's done cleanly. As clean as it gets. Nobody took any avoidable damage there. I wish I could say the same about this Echelon fight coming up. It was definitely not clean. 79.85% is exactly what you need on enemy forces. A lot of people think it's 80%. That's quickly dispelled. If you open up your MDT, if you can get to 79.85%, it's always perfect. So my route takes us to 79.85. And then we just Shroud Script that whole second area. Come up here and start fighting this guy. This is where we blow Lust. It's important not to blow Lust on Halkias. Because this boss is simply just much more difficult. Way more difficult. The first boss is a complete joke. So as you can see here, we actually run into an awkward moment with our cooldowns and we don't have enough AoE to kill these ads before the slam comes down. So we have 4 ads out here out of 6. That's not ideal at all. So we know, just based on that data alone, that we're going to have to throw out some huge damage because the next set of ads is going to have 10. Hunter didn't get the memo though because he threw out his Wild Spirits before the ads came down. Never a good thing. That's right though. So I believe if so I Convoke at the beginning there. That throws out quite a bit of damage. I also use my Blood Spattered Scale. I use my AoE Interrupt to stop the Villainous Bolts from going out. And that helps us considerably. Unfortunately, I don't think our healer knew that she was targeted by this slam. I thought she thought it was someone else. And by then, she didn't realize it. It was too late. So I decursed her. But she only hit about half of the Stone Fiends there. Certainly not ideal, especially considering with the location of them. She could have easily gotten all 10. So at this point, I know I'm going to have to burn my Incarn. So Curse comes out. I pull it off the healer immediately. That's generally our strategy. I don't waste time trying to figure out who actually has the Curse and the Slam. I just immediately decurse the healer because then she can top off the person with the Slam. We clean up pretty much everything except the one Stone Fiend. Actually, there's two Stone Fiends, but we've pretty much recovered at this point. Again, not a clean boss fight by any means. Made a lot of mistakes. The red circles are everywhere. People who are doing like 26, 27s on Tyrannical in here would look at this and be like, well, this isn't gonna pass mustard. But we do get the job done. I think we have one death at the very end here. As you can see, the Stone Fiends on the edge actually glitch out. They just stand there at the side. That's not a good thing for us. They aren't casting on one hand, but that introduces some complications there at the end. So Villainous Bolts killed the healers there. Not a big deal because it's at the end, but at the same time, certainly a mistake that we can clean up. And that's just by AoE fears and making sure that we're not allowing the casts to get off. So we pull Varith out here. Some people, especially in the higher end, they're going to pull Varith with the next pack. I don't have Incarn up here. I usually do. I tend not to Incarn on the boss fight at all. I end up having to lose about 2 minutes on the effective use of the cooldown. But generally, our practice is to avoid pulling Varith with that pack. And you'll see what we do here to kind of make up that time. Alright, so we're going to get Varith down here. Nothing special about this guy. He's certainly the easiest of the 4 lieutenants. Very straightforward guy. We pick our Stygian King's Barbs. It's always good if you get that early on. It loses some value this much later in, but there isn't really any other good option. You're still going to take the percentage health. Especially for this pull alone. The value of it is quite high, even when you are kiting. The overall damage from the initial auto attacks on a bear especially are quite high, because you can sit in the pole for a full 30 seconds with Incarn. So as you can see here, I start out without my Incarn. This is always a nervous situation when this happens, but it was kind of necessary. It's important for your DPS to not stand in the doorway when you do this LOS pull though. And that's because some of the ads, if they start to get aggro on things, can just start firing Wicked Bolts on random people in the doorway. So make sure everyone's out of line of sight. But this pull in general is a complete mess. You can see a Wicked Bolt. I think 2 Wicked Bolts actually got off, or a shoot plus a Wicked Bolt got onto our healer. We're not being clean with our kicks and stuns, but we are making enough of a difference. You can see here I pull the curse off of our healer. I believe a Collect Sins gets casting here. Yeah, I had to kick that one. That's not my assignment. Ideally, I'm going to be kicking the Wicked Bolts because that's the thing doing the most damage to me. But the Collect Sins overall, as long as you can survive the Wicked Bolt, is actually more important, because if the Collect Sins cast gets off in a full duration, it actually spawns a bunch of little ads that do a considerable amount of damage, and then you also have to actually gain aggro on those little animated sins. You can see one of them in the pack there, a couple of them I think. And if you don't get aggro on them, if you're kiting full time and you can't do anything about it, they're going to start meleeing your DPS. Alright, so we move up into the next room. Generally our strategy here is double gargoyle and a boss. When it's fortified weeks, we skip Soggadon. And if it's tyrannical weeks, generally we're not going to be skipping Soggadon unless I'm playing on my Blood DK. My Blood DK I find is much easier to tank Soggadon buffed Lord Chamberlain. Alright, so we have an assigned kicked order for the volleys of power. The bolt of powers only go out on the tank, I believe. But even if they don't, I mean, I think it's telling that I don't actually know the answer to that, even though I've ran this key several hundred times already in Shadowlands, because it just doesn't do anything. Even at the highest level of Tyrannical, you just ignore the bolts. See, our warrior called the kick there and barely made the kick because he was in a whirlwind, or a blade storm. Living the dream. You see there I got nervous with the volley kick. But our warrior managed to grab it as well. So you see I pop out of... I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here. On occasion you'll see throughout this key, or you have seen throughout this key, that I pop my Heart of the Wild and I start to convoke on bosses. This was much more doable back before they nerfed the skill. that you get through a passive that was part of the buffs to tanks in general. It provided additional damage reduction to your character. It was part of the tank balancing because the kite meta was out of control in Season 1. They applied that to a passive skill, however, that actually applied to all shapeshift forms. And they reverted that in 9.1 to make it to where it only applied to bear. So when you pop out of your bear form, you're actually just really squishy, right? So you only want to use this Heart of the Wild Convoke strategy on bosses while they're doing something other than hitting you. So you saw there, I'm trying to either aim it when he's doing a cast or when I know that his animations aren't set up, or an alternative is just let your healer know that you're about to convoke. I actually think that was the case here. I just let my healer know, hey, I'm about to convoke. And she knows from that I'm going to be popping out of bear form, and I could potentially be taking a lot more damage in the next few seconds. But it's always worth it. I mean, when you pop Heart of the Wild and you convoke, it's a considerable amount of damage. So as long as you're being safe about it, it's certainly worth doing. But yeah, nothing much more to say about this boss. Pretty straightforward strategies. Continue to move the boss around to the urns so that your melee DPS don't have to move out of boss range to soak up the little adds that he spawns. Last second volley gets out. We're all garbage. Alright, so we have 6 minutes left here. We know we don't need to rush or do anything crazy. At this point, we're just going to go in and kill the ads. And the strategy generally that we've adopted here is we kill the first 2 packs as quickly as we can. And the general rule of thumb here is to kill as many as we can before there's stragglers, like you see here on the right side. This one right here is going to be about 50% health. This one these 2 down here are probably going to be a decent amount of health. If we spend a lot of time killing just these 3 when they're spread out like this, we could have actually killed probably 7 or 8 up here, but with the same amount of time. The goal here when we come into this room is to kill as many as we possibly can before he gets the casts off. And the end goal there is to avoid him casting it a 3rd time. Some people are doing much higher keys than us, either going to try to Zerg this guy to where he doesn't even do it the 2nd time. But we have yet to be able to find the damage and the routing to make that happen for ourselves in a high fortified key like this. So generally we're just going to kill as many ads as we can. Being careful, of course, as the tank to get aggro quickly on these manifestations of envy, because these things will wreck your healer if you just let them run around. And as you can see here, we're just killing as many tormented souls as possible. If we get this number low enough, then he'll only cast it this one more time and we won't have any more tormented souls. So as you can see here, all the tormented souls are dead now. They're all popping into manifestations of envy. I get aggro on them quickly. And from here, we just have to kill the little ads and then finish off Cigar. We've been in this room about a minute so far, and we're effectively doing unhealed damage on Cigar already. And again, keeping an eye on the timer. For fortified weeks on a 22 with the DPS at our level, we can generally kill them in a few minutes. We know we have time here. We just got to stay clean and make sure we don't die to anything stupid. So you'll see me drag him over, being careful to pop my healing. We do throw Cocoon down there. That was not ideal because I had the cooldowns. My healer just got nervous that I was going to die. But Cocoon, you know, if you're running with a Mistweaver Monk or generally in this room, even on Fortified, try to avoid making your healer use cooldowns on you when it's a Sagadon buff final boss, regardless of whether it's, I mean, certainly when it's on Tyrannical, but even on Fortified, you'll see in this fight coming up. It takes a lot of effort to keep me alive through his bleed effect on me when it's buffed by Sagadon, because I'm going to be taking 50% extra physical damage from this guy. So with Sagadon debuff, everyone is debuffed with 50% damage taken. That applies to statues at full marks. So if you get hit by a statue at this level, you're going to die, which is what you saw me do just there. We're going to rewind this because this is actually kind of crazy. This is the first time this has ever happened to me. We've seen statues collide with other statues numerous times. But this part of it's actually just incredibly buggy. So you're going to see this statue here and this statue here are going to collide with each other. He's going to grab this one and he's going to throw it into this one. But look at the trajectory here and where I'm located. So it just clips the edge of this statue. I thought it was just going to hit the side of the statue and then bounce backwards. That's generally what happens. But it actually clips the statue and it flings this one a full square in my direction. It stomps me to death. So at this point in Discord, I'm like, oh my god, somebody B-res me. Because I'm so positive we just wiped, which would have been a feels bad. Fortunately, and as you can see here, I take the B-res out of a panic because I'm desperately trying to make sure I can taunt the guy before my warrior dies. So as you can see here, I've got my rogue B-resing me. I pull it up, I accept, and then another spear flying into me, trying to kill me off. But fortunately, I didn't have the bleed on me at the time. So we're able to stabilize just by that fact. The statue is not going to one-shot me even from 60% health. The combination of the bleed and the statue, on the other hand, absolutely murdered me when that statue bounced into me. So I convoke here. It's important that you let your healer know if you're playing a bear druid when you're going to convoke on this boss, because it helps them save a cooldown. On Fortified, it's not necessarily a huge deal. If you have DPS at our level and you're also lusting, generally you're going to be able to kill this guy before the third Ritual of Woe goes off. It's not going to be an issue. But on Tyrannical weeks, it's important you guys, if you're in a push group or if you're in a pug, try to communicate in some meaningful way where the cooldowns are going to be going. Like if you're playing a Night Fae Druid, right before you pull the boss, just be like, hey, I'll convoke on the first ritual. It's not going to save your group. I mean, your healer should still know that that's not going to be enough to completely mitigate all the damage, but you don't want your healer popping everything on the first ritual if you're convoking. So as you can see here, the bleed comes back up. Fortunately, we have Cocoon again, which was huge because I had communicated in Discord that I didn't have a DR, so fortunately she had Cocoon for me there. And that was able to absorb a very significant amount of the bleed. Which is, I mean, you don't really see it because my health bar isn't ticking as much. I'm going to try to give you a good example of what this bleed is doing. So, yes, okay. As you can see, my health bar, I'm not taking any damage here, it's channeling. I went from 70k to 37 with 2 ticks of that bleed. You know, it's basically, it's effectively doing around 20,000 damage per second to me. It's a massive amount of damage. Maybe 10 to 15,000 damage per second. But with this Sagadon debuff, even on Fortified, it's ticking for at least 10 to 15,000 damage per second. So it's extremely important that your healer is keeping an eye on your health if you're going to skip Sagadon. But yeah, that damage is no joke. Always keep an eye on your health bar. But there with the Cocoon at the end of the bleed, I just let my well-honed instincts tick down. Alright, so as you can see, the key's done. We finished it with 1 minute and 30 left. Not a bad performance for us. There's obviously some areas there where we could have improved. 2 deaths is certainly not all that bad. We certainly didn't have any full wipes, which would have bricked this key with how safe our route was. But it was pretty straightforward. This key on Blood Decay, which is primarily what I've tanked with in Season 2 with this guy, as you can see, I gained 17 points of IO in this Halls of Atonement by doing it on my Druid here. I haven't been pushing really hard with the Druid this season, just because I've really enjoyed the mix-up. When you play Bear for too long, I'm sure some of you might disagree, but when you play Bear for too long, it starts to wear on you a little bit, just because of how, I don't want to say boring, but I guess just how linear your gameplay is. Convoca's helped that a little bit, but I mean, for the most part, you're just a thrash factory. Blood DK provides a little bit more of a stimulating gameplay. But yeah, I mean, that's generally the walkthrough. That's our key review. A couple of things to take from this. We certainly need to work on our kick orders. A couple of tips for you guys as you're reviewing your videos like this, if you want to in the future. Keep a pen and paper. Obviously, I did this before I recorded the video, but keep a piece of paper and a pen next to you. Just to write down the different notes that you have, especially if you're doing it with a team, so that you can actually go over it with your teammates. Ideally, they're going to be doing the same thing. They're also going to be reviewing their key. But if it's kind of something that you want to do just yourself, obviously most of the focus needs to be on what you could be doing better. But if you're recognizing some key issues with the group that you can fix with your own communication, your own shot calling, or just by having a brief conversation before the key starts, that's always helpful. It's gonna be tremendously helpful that you actually start to practice writing down things you can improve on, and trying to implement those changes into your runs. Yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. Please write down in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer those. This has been Bowserkins. Thanks for watching my live key review, and have a great one.